Great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the East Colfax BRT community webinar. Thank you for spending your evening with us. My name is Abby Abel, and I will be facilitating this evening. And just to let you know, the evening will be recorded. Before we dive into anything, I wanted to hand it over to our partner, Dwayne Stillwell, who will be providing Spanish interpretation services this evening. Dwayne.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting. This will be a bilingual meeting. Interpretation is being provided from English into Spanish and from Spanish into English as needed. At the end of this announcement, you'll be able to click on the interpretation icon. All participants, English or Spanish speakers, should click on the interpretation icon, a globe at the bottom of your screen, and pick the language of your choice. If you do not pick a language, you will not be able to listen to the interpreter. Thank you. Hola a todo el mundo, bienvenidos a la reunión de hoy. Esta es una reunión bilingüe. Habrá traducción del inglés al español y del español al inglés si es necesario. Al concluir este mensaje podrán hacer clic en el icono de interpretación, el globito en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Todos los participantes, ya hablen inglés o español, deben hacer clic en el icono de interpretación que se encuentra en la parte inferior de la pantalla y elegir el idioma de su elección. Si no elige un idioma, no podrá escuchar al intérprete. Gracias. We're all set.
Great. Dwayne, thank you. So tonight we want to share a comprehensive update on the East Colfax BRT project. And while we take this opportunity to present information, know that this is really part one of a two-step process. And so in early 2024, we will host a community open house for all of you to engage with this material more closely and to ask detailed questions of many of the folks that you see on the video this evening. So for this reason, we certainly encourage questions in the Q&A. And while all participants will be muted throughout the presentation, we will address as many of your questions as we can in the Q&A portion of this evening's call. For any questions that we don't get to, we encourage you to submit them via the form on the website that you can see on the slide here. Your questions will also inform topics that we include on the project website and in future outreach. So let's get started. To begin, let me recognize the key partners in this project, many of whom are in attendance this evening. Beyond the City and County of Denver, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, we have representation in this project from the Regional Transportation District, from the City of Aurora, from the Denver Regional Council of Governments, from the Colorado Department of Transportation, the Federal Transit Administration, our many business improvement districts throughout the corridor, our equity and accessibility partners, and certainly our city council members, and I believe that Councilman Hines is on the call, and perhaps other council members and their staff, and I want to thank you for taking the time to be on this call this evening. So our plan for this evening is to provide a couple of things. One, we want to share with you a project overview. We want to update you on the project design, including branding, stations, and streetscape design. We want to provide an update on the curbside access plan. Many of you have been involved in that, as well as the safety analysis. Our preliminary construction plan and principles, as well as an update on small business support, and then share some next steps with you as well. You're going to hear from quite a few folks this evening, and so I want to just take a moment to share with you who you are going to hear from. So first and foremost, you'll hear from John Stewart. John is our project director. You'll also hear from James Moore, who will speak to design. Nick Vanderkwak and Charlie Alexander from our consultant team will speak to the curbside access plan, as well as the safety analysis. Marcy Loughran is here from our construction communications team to talk about the construction plan, the preliminary construction plan, and the principles. Joanne Greek from our Department of Economic Development and Opportunity, who will speak to small business opportunities. And Elena Vescanes may join us to speak to us the same type of opportunities, but from the City of Aurora. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to John Stewart to provide a project update.
All right, thanks a lot, Abby. And everybody, thanks for attending this webinar. I really appreciate it. We have a lot to go through, so I'm just going to quickly go through a project update and kind of talk high level about why we're reminding everyone why we're doing this project. So the vision of the East Colfax Bus Rapid Transit project is to move people more efficiently, safely, and sustainably along East Colfax Avenue. That hits on a lot of the goals that's been priority for the city of Denver and the Department of Transportation in particular for several years now. And this represents the culmination of many of those priorities and goals that we've been working on. Let's go to the next slide, please. Briefly, again, this is the extent of the project. It starts on the left in the yellow area at Denver Union Station. In that yellow area, which is downtown Denver, it's going to be traveling, the bus line will be traveling along existing dedicated bus-only lanes. And then once we get to the blue section starting at Civic Center Park, then we will be going to a center running bus rapid transit. So this will have bus stations along the center of the roadway and dedicated bus only lanes in the center of the roadway. It will be like that for the entire blue area all the way to Yosemite, where we will again transition in the Denver area, but transition into the orange area in which is in the city of Aurora. And it will go to a side running bus rapid transit, and it will be mixed flow at that point. And the project will continue east all the way to I-225. So that is the extent of the project. Let's go to the next one. Again, just to remind you of the many benefits that this project has to offer. There are social, economic, and environmental benefits. This gives people more reliable and sustainable travel options. That's something that voters have been asking to have for a long time now, is different ways to travel through the corridor that are safe, reliable, and quick, that is something other than a single occupancy vehicle. It also supports more vibrant, walkable, and connected neighborhoods. There's a sizable investment in streetscaping along this along the corridor as well to help enhance that. There's a variety of economic benefits. Just reducing the amount of travel time it takes for the bus to go from the east to the west or vice versa through the length of the corridor. The savings in time has a variety of economic benefits, and it also benefits the transit network as a whole because it has other second order benefits to bus lines that connect to the bus rapid transit line. And also it has environmental benefits. We expect it to have a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions as well. So let's move on to the next slide, please. So this is the basic project timeline that we've been on for the last few years. We started preliminary design and the environmental review back in 2020. Last summer, we submitted our small starts rating application. Then this spring in 2023, we received our rating from FTA and received a high rating. And also over the past year, we've been working on what we call final design. And in the summer of 2023, I think in August that was, or maybe July, we got to 60% design. And that's where we are right now. We've completed 60% design, and we're working on progressing that to a 90% design. We expect to have 90% design completed in February. We'll have the Denver segment done a few weeks earlier than that, and then the Aurora segment done in February. And at that point, a lot of things will be happening. We'll be requesting final FTA funding approval and going through a variety of processes with FTA to finalize getting our grant funding from them. Also, after that in May, we will get to 100% design, and that means we'll be asking Parsons and all the other design engineers to put their pencils down. That's going to be the construction plans that we're going to build the project from. And then in Q3 2024, sometime in the summer, that's when we expect construction to begin. And construction will last from Q3 of 2024 and go into 2027 when we expect revenue operations to begin. Let's go to the next slide, please. Oh, okay. So am I done? I'm done. All right. Thanks, everybody.
We're going to shift now to a design update. And so I'm going to hand it over to James Moore to talk about branding stations and streetscape design. James?
Thank you, Abby. Hi, everyone. James Moore here. I think on the next slide, you'll see first up is a branding update. So you've seen the link's name and logo in grayscale, but now a color palette has been selected. You can see that here on the screen. Note the teal square at the bottom, that'll be used as an accent color for various applications. And the team is currently working on what those applications will look like on buses, shelters, signage, etc. So we've got color now. Next slide, Emma. Okay. So I'm going to give you an update on where things are with station and streetscape enhancements. We'll touch on some design refinements that fall under these three important design goals here: safety, accessibility, and comfort. So thank you. Yeah, so highlighted are a couple of items I'm going to touch on using the next slide here. They both apply to the BRT station platform. So one safety improvement or enhancement that we've added since we last spoke, if you're looking at the screen, the right side of the platform, what we call the platform nose, we've officially included a secondary egress at that location. You can see the step off there and the break in the wall. In addition, we've got what we call an area of refuge assistance down at the same cone end for any disabled folks in the event that the crosswalk side access is cut off. Disabled folks can congregate at that right side cone end, which has space for 2 wheelchairs next to each other. So they can be rescued at that point. And then I think there's a couple of refinements I can talk about using the next slide. So you may look at this and say, hey, not much has changed. You're right, the shape and the scale and the proportions of the arch are all the same. But there are some subtle changes. So, you know, the splash guard or the wall in the back and the windscreen, which is mounted on top, those designs and limits have been adjusted a bit. I mentioned earlier, we're working on locations of branding elements, so sign showing station identification and links logos. Those are all being sorted out, trying to figure out where those work best on the platform and on the shelter. Lighting has been adjusted. Light poles are now shown mounted to the top of that splash guard wall. Number of lights have been adjusted, all in an effort to improve safety, maintenance, and make it future-proof. So what else? The canopy that you see there, that's glass. We're working with Denver Arts and Venue to produce, or to work with artists to produce art that will go inside the glass panels there on the canopy. So the general idea is that each bus station will have a unique piece of artwork. Those details are to be determined, but we're really looking forward to seeing what the artists produce at these locations. Okay, next slide. Okay, same recurring theme here, safety, accessibility, and comfort. And I think we're going to talk about these as they relate to some of the streetscape elements. So again, highlighted here, we've enhanced the pedestrian and the bike crossings. We ended up adding some protected left turn lanes, additional left turn lanes at Syracuse Street based on an analysis the design team did on distance between left-hand turns in the BRT condition. What else? Under accessibility, so, you know, we're meeting with stakeholders. One of those stakeholders in the community is National Jewish Hospital. We're working on putting a signal at that intersection at Jackson Street, reason being the left turns from Colfax can only happen at signalized intersections. And of course, National Jewish needs that at the main entrance to their hospital. Comfort-wise, you know, we heard loud and clear from the community and the various stakeholders that a tree canopy really improves the look of the corridor. And then, of course, pedestrian lighting. I would say that's actually a safety and a comfort item as well. So I think we can go to the next slide and we could talk about some of these streetscape items. So a toucan crossing is one of those enhanced pedestrian bicycle crossings that I mentioned. These images here are actually at Alameda and Garfield. So they are implemented in several spots throughout the city. A toucan crossing stands for two can cross. So pedestrians and bicycles both have a signal head. Bicyclists there's video detection. So the signal knows that they're stopped at the light. Pedestrians will have a pedestrian push button that they can use to activate the signal. At these crossings, motorists must turn right. They cannot go through. And then the pedestrians and bicyclists pass through the intersection under signal protection. So definitely a safety improvement there. On this project, on the BRT project, similar to these treatments you're seeing on the screen, we plan these crossings at Vine, Fairfax, Belair, Tamarack, and Willow Streets currently. Okay, next slide. And these are just a couple of images showing some of the streetscape enhancements we've officially incorporated into the plans. Of course, you've seen the curb extensions on earlier images. Just to recap, those are important because they provide more sidewalk space. In addition, they reduce the length of the crossing for pedestrians, which makes it safer when they're crossing the street. We've got an image of an ornamental acorn light here. This is a typical pedestrian light. In locations along Colfax where we have existing ped lights, we plan on upgrading the fixtures, whether they need repair or if there's a more efficient, brighter, longer lasting fixture, we'll do that. In areas where there is no ped lighting, particularly east of Elm Street, there's a lack of pedestrian lighting. We do plan on proposing and constructing pedestrian lighting in that location. Next slide. So I mentioned trees. You know, it's hard to fit in trees that will one day be very large and mature into this constrained area. So these particular images are showing you what a soil system looks like. The soil cell system allows us to basically accommodate you know, all the room and soil a tree's root system needs to be healthy and to thrive, while at the same time supporting infrastructure, in this case sidewalk on top. So the benefit here is we can fit these in here. The trees will live. They'll have the root system will have everything they need to grow, but it has a very minimal effect on the sidewalk width, which is important, I know, to all the businesses and folks using the corridor. And I think that's it on the tree slide. I think is that the end of my slides?
It is, James. Appreciate it. Appreciate the update on design, and excited to see the color applied to the Lynx logo. So appreciate that update. And now we're going to provide an update on the curbside access plan and the safety analyses, and we're going to kick it over to Nick Vanderkwak to lead us through that conversation.
Great, thank you, Abby. So as Abby mentioned, I'm leading the curbside access plan component of the project. And really the purpose of this study is spawned because many of the spaces on Colfax as part of the design, the parking spaces, are being removed as part of the project. And so with that change, we really want to understand the impacts to Colfax and also the surrounding neighborhoods, and really wanted to study, and what we've done is looking at parking utilization. And what we're going through now is looking at recommended curb regulations that really can help to address the area's changing needs based off the BRT located there and changing conditions that are happening on the corridor. The boundaries of the area that we've looked at are between Broadway and Colorado Boulevard, and then between 13th Avenue and 17th Avenue. It does not include 13th or 17th specifically, but includes all of the side streets leading up to those locations. Go to the next slide. So as part of this process, we've concluded our data collection efforts. We've looked at the utilization of all the streets in this area, and we've made some preliminary recommendations. As part of that process, we've been working with a stakeholder group consisting of some of the folks on the call today and others, key stakeholders along the corridor, to really evaluate what types of changes to the curb use make the most sense for Colfax and the surrounding streets. Some of the preliminary items that we're looking at as recommendation are metered parking on Colfax, so paid parking between Broadway and Colorado Boulevard. And then once you get east of Colorado Boulevard, it would remain unpaid at a 2-hour time regulation. Another item we're looking at is changing the time limited parking on many of the side streets. Currently, some of the side streets directly adjacent to Colfax don't have any regulations on them, and so people can park their car and leave it there. And so with the introduction of these time limited parking periods, it really limits people from leaving cars there, with residents being exempted from that with a residential parking permit. So they'll be allowed to remain there. We're also looking at standardizing time periods. A lot of the signage for parking regulations in this area was developed over a long period of time, and so it's making things less confusing, having loading zones that are the same time periods as other loading zones, and being consistent throughout the corridor. And one of the other big ideas we're looking at is developing flex zones, which really are loading zones that can be doubled for freight loading and also for Uber and Lyft pickup locations, limited to 15-minute periods. Part of that loading space, we're really dedicating and looking at the side streets for that activity to happen at the spot immediately adjacent to Colfax. So with all of that, we have a lot of detailed information online. I wanted to point out that we are looking for your feedback. The link there is listed below, tinyurl.com/colfaxcap. That survey is open. There's a general survey there, and also an opportunity to drop pins on the map and give specific feedback. And we really want to get as much as possible and integrate that into the recommendations as we revise those. So that survey is open through the end of November currently. So please go there and provide your comments and feedback, and we'd be happy to look at that as part of the design process. I'm going to pass it over to Charlie at the next slide to talk about safety.
Thank you, Nick. So we are well underway on different safety analyses for the corridor in the study area. I'll start first with analysis of East Colfax Avenue itself. So the purpose of this effort was to complete an analysis of high crash locations that have experienced a high number of crashes historically on East Colfax Avenue. We did that by both reviewing 5 years of crash data as well as doing some engineering safety analytics on those crashes to understand more statistically about what some of the outlier locations are. And then also accompanied that with field observations during rush hours or peak travel times, so that we could see how some of the conditions in the crash data are showing up in the field. We found from this analysis that the project design as is has a lot of benefits. Things like the left turn arrows at the traffic lights, the median on Colfax, the shortening of crossings, the bus lanes, and the lighting will all have a positive effect on safety, and we expect to reduce crashes on Colfax in the future. But the real purpose of this effort was to really make sure we understood if there was anything else that we should be incorporating into the project's design to really maximize safety on the East Colfax Avenue corridor, recognizing that this is historically part of the city's high injury network. So some new recommendations that we've made that we're vetting through the design process include additional turn arrows at a handful of intersections on the corridor to mitigate the risk of crashes between vehicles and people walking. Some different strategies on the traffic signals themselves to mitigate two types of crashes. One, wrong way crashes, particularly on the, well, not particularly, exclusively at the one-way couplet intersections that Colfax intersects, as well as crashes resulting from people running a red light. And then signal timing strategies for a whole host of reasons. One, to manage the operating speed of vehicles down to a reasonable level, to minimize pedestrian delay, and also to reduce instances of red light running. So with the study of Colfax itself complete and making sure that we're feeding that information into the 90% designs, we've also launched a separate safety analysis of the parallel corridors in the area or in the study area between Broadway and Yosemite, using a very similar methodology, both quantitative and qualitative. The quantitative piece of that is looking at analysis of locations that have experienced a high number of crashes. The qualitative piece of that will include field observations during rush hours. We also expect to engage more with different neighborhood groups and through the public involvement process through the Colfax BRT project to get more input from residents, business owners, visitors as to areas of safety concern for you on these corridors, and combine all of that into a set of recommendations. So we've been collecting data, been completing analysis. We expect to be rolling out some of the recommendations or all of the recommendations by the second quarter of 2024. It's possible that some of those recommendations will come sooner for different corridors if we can advance single corridors one at a time. And then, of course, once we get through that, we expect to be able to report more on the funding and implementation strategy for some of those recommendations.
Great. Charlie, Nick, thank you for those updates. We're going to transition now to the preliminary construction plan. John Stewart, our project director, had mentioned that we've onboarded our construction manager, general contractor, Kramer North America, and Marcy Loughran is here to talk a little bit about the preliminary plan and also some of the principles associated with that plan. So we'll turn it over to Marcy to take us through that.
Good, thanks, Abby. Good evening. I'm Marcy Loughran, and along with my colleague on this call, Heather Bedini, we'll be supporting the Kramer and Colfax BRT team with public information, construction communications, and outreach. And we're really looking forward to working with you all. So since we're the new faces on this call, I thought I'd just take a minute and introduce you to Kramer North America. Kramer has been selected as the CMGC, which is, Abby just said, the construction manager and general contractor for this project. Kramer brings over 40 years of experience working with Denver, RTD, City of Aurora, and CDOT. And as a heavy civil contractor, Kramer specializes in major corridor management on complex transportation projects like the Colfax BRT. You may have seen their signs around or driven on some of their recent projects. They worked on the I-25 North Express lanes, the I-25 South Gap, the 18th, 19th Lincoln Street Bike and Transit lanes, and the Havana Street Priority Signal Improvement Project in Aurora. And there's more. But they're well versed in this, and I think we're lucky to have them on this project. Next slide. So as mentioned earlier, we're now on board and working with the collective team to dive into the details and refine the work plan and the timing associated with this work. Now, I realize many of you here today may have very specific questions and maybe even concerns about the work, how and when it will impact you and or your business. While I might not be able to answer all of your questions today, please know over the next several months, we'll be listening, learning, and planning every detail of the work and identify potential impacts associated with this work. So we're in this together now. But tonight, I'd like to share some preliminary plans around how we anticipate construction activities to go. So looking at this slide here, we anticipate 5 segments of construction. We'll be working west to east, which are segments 1 to 5. As you can see, these segments overlap, and I'll explain a little bit more about that on the next slide. We're not completing one segment and then moving on to the next segment. There'll be a sequence to our construction activities. A lot of this work is based on subcontractors, efficiencies, existing conditions, material availability, etc. The way these segments are also structured also provide flexibility during construction and really allow us to maintain that forward progress. Next slide. Here we get into the phasing of the anticipated work in each section. Hopefully you guys can kind of see these. So I'm going to start with phase 1. Which is the bottom left here. And so you see the yellow, which is the construction area. So our plan here is to reduce traffic to one general purpose lane in each direction. So you can see over the asphalt areas is the switch. We'll shift the eastbound and westbound through traffic to the north. And then we'll work to construct the eastbound station platform. And it's kind of in the back of that picture. You can't see it as well in this view, but if you look into the phase 2, you can kind of see there's like a little yellow station guy popping up there. We're also in phase 1 work on roadway improvements such as curb ramps, extensions, drainage systems, pavement reconstruction, and potentially any of the sidewalk and tree improvements. So then when we move to phase 2, so now we flip sides. So we really basically just shift to the other side. However, the catch with this one is the eastbound traffic, we shift into its permanent alignment while we're constructing the westbound station and then performing the work similar to phase 1 along the roadway improvements from phase 1. So that's the drainage and pavement reconstruction, et cetera, that I just spoke about. We will also be installing some additional temporary protections and traffic devices to protect the new station. So the station that we just did in phase 1, we've got to protect that while we're working on the next station. So you'll see a few more maybe Jersey barricades and some additional construction barricades. Something to notice in this too, where you have our stations and then there's a station design or the station construction, and there's a little bit longer of these yellow pieces. Those, to do some of the work that needs to happen in the streets, you need to start a little bit earlier, but also for safety, you need to back up some of those construction barricades so that traffic can maneuver very naturally around these areas so that we're not creating more congestion or confusion really with what's going on there. So now when we move over to the final phase, say phase 3, so we now are shifting the westbound traffic into the permanent alignment to the north of the completed westbound station platforms. Then we construct the remaining amenities at the station, such as like the ticket vending machines, I think platform finishes, benches, signage, all those pieces really get kind of buttoned up here in phase 3. And then we'll also construct, I think, the divided median at the different locations that were used for those temporary traffic crossovers in earlier phases, and then perform roadway finishes and commissioning of the stations. And finally, the general purpose lanes are now in their final location with complete access and control to improve the corridor safety and the travel times. So that was a mouthful, and I'm sure there's plenty of questions. But go to the next slide. And Abby had mentioned I was going to talk a little bit about those construction plan principles. This is our starter list of what to expect during construction. Again, as we learn more, we will expand on this in detail. For example, what to expect in a particular intersection or alleyway, how pedestrians will cross at a certain street, and more. But today I wanted to share our alignment with the core construction plan principles you guys have been hearing for the last several meetings, and then a few that we have added. So here we are committed to maintaining access to all businesses throughout construction. During construction, we'll also maintain one lane of traffic in each direction. RTD will maintain the 15 and 15L service. We will always lead with safety. In each construction area, we'll have safety measures to separate construction activities from the public. We'll utilize signage and wayfinding to support closures and detours and other important information. We will have defined delivery and haul routes, so we don't want trucks wandering through the neighborhoods or side streets as they're coming in to deliver any kind of materials that we need to put in for the work that day. We'll also have very strict parking policies for construction parking. We don't want workers parking in your lots or on your side streets, so we'll have dedicated areas for construction parking, and that will be enforced. And then last on this list, we will have me and Heather as your designated point of contact throughout construction. And then in the bottom corner here, we'll be showing this a lot, is on handouts and whatever else, is those construction resources of where you can find information and where we'll post information. The project website is always going to be the best source to go through, with lots of links to get you where you need to go. There's that website inquiry form, so we're going to rely a lot on that form to get us connected with you. We'll have email communication, community meetings like this one, chats on Colfax, and one-on-one meetings. We're going to pull out all the tools in our toolbox to really make sure that we're connected with this group. Next slide. So what's next? We're currently what's called the pre-construction phase, and this is where we review and refine the plans. We engage with the community. We listen, gather feedback. So speaking of gathering feedback, next slide. We have created a short survey to learn how you all might like to receive your construction communications and updates. And we would really appreciate it if you could take a couple of minutes to fill this out. You can scan this QR code with your phone right now, or we'll be sending out the QR code and a link following this meeting. So we just please encourage you to take the survey. I think it's maybe a 2-3 minute piece, but it will really help us gauge how you like to receive your communications. And again, it's not going to be a one size fits all. We're gonna bring out all the tools and try to get you as much information the way that you take it as much as possible. So I think as I close, I'd like to say thank you for your continued engagement and interest in this project. And on behalf of the entire Kramer team, we're really looking forward to working with you and are committed to being a good partner and a good neighbor. So thank you.
Great, Marcy, thank you. Appreciate that update. And last but not least, I would like to welcome Joanne Greek and Elena Vascanes from the City of Denver and City of Aurora, respectfully, to speak about small business support. So Joanne.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Joanne Greek. I'm from Denver Economic Development and Opportunity, which is an agency of the City and County of Denver. For at least the past 4 or 5 years, we have been working with businesses in Denver that have been impacted by publicly funded construction projects. And so this project is particularly high on our list of priorities. We've also been very engaged in a lot of the public input and community processes that have already existed. So I've heard a lot of your feedback, and we're working very hard to put together some supports for businesses that'll be impacted in that construction zone. Some of the things we do have is a toolkit that we provide to businesses that will not only help you survive, but thrive in the construction zone. So we're planning a toolkit. It's usually about 8 pages, and it has a number of tips on how you can make sure that you stay connected with your customers, how you prepare for your deliveries that may be coming, how you can stay informed with customers and supply delivery trucks, and how to keep them informed of construction, how to prepare maybe a little short-term business plan on how you want to be prepared for the construction impacts that may occur. We do also have an online assessment that we'll make available to businesses so they can kind of walk through it and get a sense, answer just a few questions. How will I communicate with my customers? Do I even have emails and phone numbers of my customers so I can maybe use a bulk text messaging application to keep in touch with them, or to make them aware of certain specials and offers that we want to have to bring them in for business. So that online assessment can take you through that process. And at the very end of it, there's a choice. You can say, hey, I got this, and you check that box. Or if you can say, no, I really do want to meet with an advisor and maybe see what are some things that I want to pay attention to as we start to go into this construction phase and how I can better prepare my business. So that leads us to the third bullet here. We do have a team of 6 people on the business development team within DEDO, Denver Economic Development Opportunity, and they specialize in certain industries. So I want to make you aware that we do have this team of advisors that can meet with you one-on-one, maybe review a business plan, perhaps provide some guidance and some consultation as you start entering into these construction phases. And then we do always have other resources for small businesses. We have 2 small business lending programs. We have 2 tax credit programs. We have an underwriter on our staff that could even do a business plan review. And we have workforce services that can help your business with help in finding and recruiting and retaining employees. And there's a QR code there if you'd like to take a look at some of the details on the services and supports that we do have available for businesses within the city and county of Denver. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you about this.
Joanne, thank you. And Elena, I'd like to invite you to talk about City of Aurora resources.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Elena Vascones, and I'm the Economic Development Supervisor for the City of Aurora. The City of Aurora actually hosts the Small Business Development Center. So between the city and the SBDC, we provide a lot of support for our small businesses. And in this case, we want to reach out to all of you who are in the Aurora portion of this project to connect with you, because we will be developing a variety of tools to help you as the construction happens. We also have a group of small business consultants, and we do free and confidential one-on-one consulting. Our consultants are offering services in the area of business planning, of financial documents, marketing, social media, and accounting, bookkeeping. So we would love to support the small businesses in all these areas, and we can do it through a one-on-one free and confidential appointment. We can support you also with business plan reviews, and we do not have loan programs, but we are connected with a variety of micro lenders and bankers. So we have a network of financial organizations that we can connect you with. One specifically in Aurora that we do a lot of work with. So there are a lot of opportunities that way. And also we have a variety of training opportunities via webinars and in person. And we can also, we're very open to offering, training and education at the site, right? If there was that need. So we're looking forward to working with you. And there's for more information, there's that QR code where we can start connecting with the small businesses in this area of the city. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Elena, thank you. Appreciate that. And so now we just wanted to hit quickly on next steps and a couple of other aspects of the project that may be of interest to the folks on the call today. So one, I think many of you are aware that arts and venues for the city and county of Denver are a key stakeholder in the project. As part of this project, 1% of the construction cost will go to public art. And so we want the update there is that the selection panel has been formed. There is about 18 voting members on that selection panel and a number of non-voting advisors. It is made up of representation from all 4 city council districts. as well as community members, artists, art professionals, civic leaders, members of the Public Art Committee within Denver, and one member from the Denver Commission on Cultural Affairs. Also know that in composing this panel, the arts and venues really exceeded their equity, diversity, and inclusivity goals. And so that simply means that there's representation from historically underrepresented communities. That group will be convening on December 6th to kick off the project, and they have let us know that we should expect an RFQ sometime in early 2024 for that process, to invite artists into that process. So quick update on that. Also know many of you asked about the environmental review. The National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, documents will be available next spring, and we'll be in a better position to share some of those documents with you. I mentioned at the top of this presentation that there will be an open house. So again, this presentation is step one in a two-step process, and we're looking forward to hosting the open house for many of you to come to and really engage with this material in a more intimate way and ask the questions that you want to ask of the subject matter experts. And then finally, and we always end with this, is the best place to learn more about the project is the project website. It has been updated with the most updated content that we've reviewed today. That URL or that link is here in the slides. And I will remind you all that we invite you to fill out that survey around your construction communications preferences that Marcy mentioned, and that'll be included on the website. And we will be promoting that as well after this webinar. So with that, we'd like to move into the Q&A portion of this webinar. And I would just remind everybody that we will be taking a look at the questions that you've submitted in Q&A, and we will be facilitating that conversation. Any questions that we don't get to, please, we welcome you to submit them via the form that we have on our website here, and we will do our best to respond to those as well. So with that, I'd love to kick it over to my colleague, Emma Harrison, who is managing some of those questions in the chat, and we'll take the remaining time to address them.
Thanks, Abby, and thank you all for your great questions so far. Please continue to submit them, and just want to reiterate what Abby said. If we don't get to your question tonight, feel free to submit it via our public inquiry form on the website, and we will get back to you. I am going to take these kind of by topic in the order they were presented, starting with design. From Councilman Hines. Links shows up predominantly in numerous locations on the Auraria campus. So can we talk a little bit about choosing the name for BRT in Denver with that consideration? And John, I don't know if you want to start that or kick it to James.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. Councilman Hines, thanks for sending that over. We were aware that the Lynx was the mascot for CU Denver, and that was taken into consideration. The Lynx, the name is made to denote that you can, it provides a variety of connections to get from one place to another. And also, it's not just for the Colfax BRT, it's also planned for basically the entire BRT program for this Front Range area. As some of you may know, there are other BRT projects coming down the line. Federal is planned to have a bus rapid transit, and so is Colorado Boulevard. And there's several others that are coming, but those are the next ones in line. And so the Lynx is made to denote that's the name for all of the BRT projects in this area. And so that was a decision, I guess. I mean, we spent a lot of time working through that. And I guess the short answer is we did think about CU Denver and them being called a Lynx, but there were a lot of other considerations, and we thought this is the right way to go. It kind of denotes the priorities that we want this project and the bus rapid transit program within the Front Range area to have. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, this question I will direct to James on design and specifically to traffic lights and intersections. So is it accurate that only streets connecting to Colfax that currently have traffic lights will be able to cross Colfax in the future design? Or is it only blocks where there is a bus stop?
So the first statement is true. If you're not at a signalized intersection, you can't cross Colfax. There will be, the current design shows either a raised 6-foot wide median or a 1-foot wide special curb in between the bus lanes. And it's just for that reason, to prevent people from making left turns across the bus lanes where they shouldn't, and to prevent people from crossing in the north-south directions in between signalized intersections.
Thanks, James.
Mm-hmm.
And on a related note to configuration of the BRT in the center of the road, this question is in regards to pedestrian access, or I guess RTD riders who are accessing the BRT. So why does the plan have transit in the middle of the street, where users will originate on the sides, requiring more people to cross a more congested single lane for cars? So Charlie, that could be you, that could be James. I'll let you decide.
Yeah, I can take a first crack at it, and James or John can add on. So the center running was selected based on an alternatives analysis of multiple configurations that showed that center running would be the fastest for bus travel times, and the importance of maintaining fast and reliable bus travel in this corridor is just a huge area of importance for the project and the thousands of people that use the 15 and 15L and that make transfers to many of the north-south routes in the east part of Denver as well. The center lanes avoid friction associated with people making right turns in vehicles or with people making parallel parking maneuvers. Those are some of the key reasons why it's faster for buses than side running. It also more easily enables us to build those level boarding platforms in the center. When you do those on the side, you're more constrained by the grade with adjacent buildings. So other cities have found difficulty of getting level boarding in side running configurations. So that has both benefits for people with disabilities as well as speed, because people are able to get onto and off of the buses faster. So the buses aren't stopped as long at the stations. Lastly, in regards to the comment about pedestrian crossings, this is a great comment or question. If you think about someone who takes a round trip, with bus travel on the Colfax corridor today, they're going to take, one westbound trip and one eastbound trip, or vice versa. And presumably during either, when they go to the bus or when they get off of the bus, they're going to have to cross the street once when they make that round trip. With center running, rather than crossing the whole street once, people are going to cross half the street twice. So this total amount of pedestrian exposure is effectively the same with center running. And in similar projects, we've talked to other builders and operators of center running BRT, and those corridors have experienced benefits in pedestrian safety resulting from this configuration.
Thanks, Charlie. Moving on to a few questions on parking, and I know the curbside access plan has been in development, and Nick, you have been hosting some stakeholder meetings. But how can people see those detailed plans? Specifically, a question from Miles Tanglin. Thank you, Miles. How can we see what parking will be removed in Congress Park in a much more detailed level? And I think in general, many questions about, those proposed recommendations that you described. So where can people find more information about those?
Yeah, good question. So the link that I shared has a lot of information on the website there. It shows the spaces on Colfax, and those are all paid parking, as I mentioned earlier. it shows the side streets as well. Really, the project is not proposing a lot of parking changes on the side streets, other than potentially right near Colfax, with maybe some loading zones or things like that. Generally, the parking changes that we're talking about within the curbside access plan are looking at changing the time restrictions and changing the time limits in some of those places. So the current draft is on that website, and we are looking at all of the comments dropped on the map, and we will be revising according to what we hear. So that's the best place to go for now.
Thanks, Nick. Construction, directed at you, Marcy, a few questions about the specifics of construction. You know, when will we be starting, and how will community members be notified of the construction in front of, you know, either their doorstep or in front of their business?
Absolutely, great question. We do anticipate starting construction in Q3 of next year with construction mobilization, starting with the segment 1 at the Broadway, at the start of Broadway. As far as how folks are going to get their information, we are also going to be, you know, meeting with businesses and residents and over the next few months and really understanding what happens in their business, around their business, et cetera. You know, what are their hours? What are, you know, the trash pickup? Where's trash for this? Some people have grease traps that need to be emptied, things like that. So those are all of the conversations that we intend to have over the next couple of months to get to really understand what are the pushes and pulls of the businesses and the folks living around, so that we can make sure that as our plan moves forward, we're tracking to be as least create the least amount of impact as possible. As far as how folks are going to know, I really encourage everybody to take that survey that I popped up. That is going to ask you, you know, do you like newsletters? Do you like one-on-one meetings? You know, we'll have a project hotline, all sorts of different things, so that we can push that information out in multiple fashions. I mean, some will be maybe corridor or segment specific. To here's, you know, your construction notice or of what's happening. And we hope to back up how we give you that information. It's not going to be, hey, we're starting tomorrow and surprise, you know, let's back that up and give some runway to when we start the work in those specific areas. You know, we found that when people know in advance what's going to happen, you know, you can take it in a little bit easier, and we can have more conversations about it. And okay, well, you know, maybe there's some signage that needs to be put up here. How about what about X, Y, and Z? And we can have those real conversations face to face to make this as easy as possible.
Great, Marcy, thank you. And we have a couple more minutes. There were some questions about the pedestrian lights. And in particular, is what we saw on the slides, is that going to be the design and the pedestrian lights on the corridor? James, and then the follow-up question to that is, can you please explain what a toucan signal is?
Sure, I can handle these questions. So the acorn light on the slide is just representative. We have not finalized what that pedestrian light will look like. East of Elm Street, where we're adding new lights. That's a standard ornamental ped light. I think over in the Mayfair Town Center area, there are lights similar to that. So I think that's why we chose that for the slide. So more to come on that selection. Toucan Crossing stands for Two Can Cross, and it's those two groups of individuals are pedestrians and bicyclists. No cars.
Great. James, thank you. I'm looking through the list of questions. There are quite a few. Emma, do you have any others that pop out for you?
Are you asking me, Abby?
Nope, she's asking me.
Okay.
This is a question on small business support. Thank you for submitting it. Do we have data on the effect of construction on small businesses, whether that is revenue lost or otherwise? What does that look like typically?
I can speak to that because we have been doing construction impact programs for the last 5 years. We have very real data and aggregated. It's usually anywhere from like 30 to 50% revenue decline.
Thanks, Joanne. One question on construction, I will direct this at Marcy. In the configuration or in the phasing, will one lane of traffic along Colfax be open at all time? Or will it depend on what phase we're in?
There will be one lane of traffic in each direction at all times, running during construction, no matter what the phase is. The other piece that I don't think I had mentioned is we are looking at doing bus pull-out areas in these temporary lane pieces, so that when the buses, obviously they don't stop and block that entire lane, so they have some space to go, and then the traffic can maintain just to keep things moving. We also will be aligning whenever we're on one phase or the other phase, the lights. We'll be using the existing street lights and stuff and make those as normal as possible and shift those so that when the two lanes are next to each other, you have very predictable lights. Sometimes you see in some temporary construction situations, temporary lights that maybe hang over, whichever. So we want to keep this as normal as possible to keep traffic moving.
Great, Marcy, thank you. And I want to just take this moment to thank everybody for participating. We're at the hour. We want to be respectful of everybody's evenings. So again, this has been recorded. We will post this on the project website, and we will incorporate your questions into follow-up content. Look forward to the invitation to the open house in the new year. Wish you all a wonderful Thanksgiving and look forward to seeing you at future engagements. Take care. Good evening. Thank you.